So everybody's had a chance to go through the minutes. Is there anything on the minutes that you'd like to discuss? Yes. Yeah. I would think. To the surprise of exactly no one who's read the minutes anyway. I do take exception to the way that my report on the request for financial information is portrayed here. I drafted up a version which I think accurately and fairly captures what I said, captures the substantive parts of what I said. I'll circulate it, and I would like to substitute that for the corresponding section in the minutes that's attached to the agenda. I keep one for myself. Hope you guys see the values. On the website, it's the EBS opportunity. We're going to take a moment to read that. So again, these are the substantive contents of the report to the committee that I made in February.
You managed to meet with anybody?
No,
Regarding
there's subsequent agenda items we bring that up again.
okay.
Met loss. I think, well, it's a motion to amend the minutes. I think that your amendment addresses the first paragraph of that minutes, but it doesn't clarify the other parts that were part of the meeting discussion. Well, I tell you what, I'll speak to the second paragraph there. That is accurate to what was said in the meeting. Staff, well, okay, let's say then that staff claim that further information requests have gone beyond the scope of the committee. Because I don't think staff is in a position to authoritatively make a decision on disagreement between, I guess, a committee member and what's in the terms of reference, the direction we have and the mandate we have from council. Am I wrong? Does staff have authority to rule on something where there's a disagreement pertaining to our mandate, the scope for mandate?
Correct me if I'm wrong, Mr. Cole, but what you're asking is, there's been a different interpretation in the mandate, and you're suggesting that
Terry says that the second paragraph is, accurately portrays or captures what staff said. I don't recall staff actually addressing the mandate at that last meeting, but it's possible they did. The clarification, though, in the way it's worded, is this sounds like it's an established fact that the request for further information is beyond the mandate of the committee. And I would dispute that. I don't see how that it can be an established fact. And I disagree with you on that point. Well, you're one member. We'll see how this pans out.
I might, as you know, I'm exiting stage left. This is my last meeting with you. I'm here to actually introduce Director Bratislav. One of the challenges I see for this committee is, and I think some of you tried to establish, is staff have a role in operations, and there's a measure of trust that's required around this. And this committee is about the vision, the future, the plan. And there's times where this committee is getting into things that even council doesn't get into. And so if you spend your time down here, you're not going to advance some of the strategic things that you want to see done you're an entity that is giving recommendations to council about the future of the harbor. You're not an operational committee. I mean, Mr. Fleming, I wonder if you could help us out a little bit, because maybe it's a council and this governance piece that I think you've had a bit of experience with. And I'm hoping that maybe you could help give us a little bit of guidance here.
Yeah, I'm just looking for the actual terms of reference on the website, but yeah, generally advisory committees of council are just that. Their mandate is to provide advice and recommendations to council, who is the decision maker. And the committees don't direct staff or direct operational. That's council's mandate. And so that's sort of my general comment. As I said, I'm just, while the conversation's going, look, I know the terms of reference are online, and I'm just looking for them to refresh my memory with what they say specifically.
I have them here, if that'll help. And they were attached to the agenda also.
Chair, Mr. Fleming. So I'm talking broadly. I'm not talking just only about this committee. And I think it gets very confusing for community members around what an advisory committee does versus what council does versus what staff does. And this is Mr. Fleming's forte and expertise, and I'm hoping he can provide some clarity there. And then the other thing too is there's times where we all get involved in things with different objectives, and clarity around why Mr. Parsons is here and why Mr. Fraser is here. Sometimes that conversation is good to have, so that the team, the advisory committee, is clear about why you're here. So Mr. Fleming, maybe we'll give him a second, Mr. Colbert, and then that will be helpful. Because this is one that helps us as staff too. But one thing I will say is an advisory committee is an opportunity to have good dialogue and for us to get a temperature check on the things that are of concern to you. What happens for me, my role, is that I have a role and the next person has a role of ensuring that we're very careful. And it's not that we don't want criticism as an organization, but when it comes to naming and blaming certain staff, and that's not what we're doing here, Mr. Colvin, in this instance, I have to be very mindful that we stay away from those operational pieces. If you've got a problem with something, I will deal with the operations to get us to that without critiquing an individual. And it's just something I've observed in this committee. Other committees have struggled with that. And then once everybody's clear, then you can focus on the business that you really want to get done. I'm kind of doing this while I give Mr. Stevens a chance to read here.
I can say something while we're waiting. The way you describe the purpose of this committee, it's almost like a visioning exercise, and that's certainly not the way I see it. And I don't think many people, if anybody around this table, sees it. This is a very specific statement made by the city administration that the request for certain information exceeds the mandate of the committee. And it's presented as a fact. I dispute that.
But I'm just going to read out the purpose of the committee.
Yeah.
Work plans and objectives. So again, future, operations issues and improvements, long-term planning, coordinating feedback and communication between the Harbour Users, Harbour staff and council, and other matters referred to the committee from council, where council might say, hey, you know what, you want to do a big new sign? Run it by the committee, see what they think. Will it meet their objectives? So it's up to all of you to help get each other on the same page. So, and I know it's really frustrating, Mr. Colbert, and I do know that some of you have different views and you've sat on committees. When Mr. Fleming's ready, he'll let you know. I cannot stay for the whole meeting. I have a time limit with certain things I have to get done with the council. I'm going to take a pause and I'm going to smile and introduce you to Director Jamie Breslab.
Okay.
So one of the things that we've heard is that there are things that you want improved. We are a fairly mean management team at this point in time, and we've made a shift of moving our civics and wharf under our Parks, Rec and Culture department. And that is an operational shift to try and respond and address to some of the things that we've been hearing. to give a bit more bandwidth. Now, of course, I'm doing this to Mr. Retzlaff when he doesn't yet have his waiting people in place yet. But thought that especially at this time, it's a good move. There's a nice synergy between the operational requirements. I know you're not nice strength, I know you're not, but there's certain synergies in that operational plans that Mr. Retzlaff brings. So I'd like to warmly welcome him here. Some of you might know him from the complex. And through the chair, I know I'm breaking rank with the order of things. So I hope you're okay with it. I think we're a little bit more informal here. And Mr. Retzlaff isn't going to have all the history on this. He's coming in fresh. But with those fresh eyes come opportunity. So thank you.
Welcome. Thank you.
So are we waiting for Mr.
There we go. We give him a chance to read. Good to go, Mr. Fleming.
Okay, just wanted to let the conversation take its course. So yeah, your mandate is in the purpose statement, which Lisa just made reference to, as to what the mandate of the committee is and what your parameters are. And like council, you're a collective, you make decisions collectively, not individually, by voting on things during committee meetings. And a majority is required to advance a recommendation to council. So as as it's in the purpose, it's to advise council in relation to the 3 harbors, but specific to the 5 bullet points that are identified in the terms of reference, which work plans and objectives, operations issues and improvements, long-term planning, coordinating feedback and communication between harbor users, harbor staff, and council, and other matters referred to the committee from council. And this goes on to reinforce that the committee is an advisory group making recommendations to council, and it goes on to say has no delegated authority to oversee or direct harbor staff or operations. So that is the mandate in the sort of box, if you want to put it, that you make your advice and recommendations in, which is the prerogative of council to determine what the terms of reference for one of their advisory committees would be. And then the rest of it goes on to talk about membership and voting and things like that. So to me, it's fairly, what your business needs to be is meet that beginning part of your terms of reference that are listed in the purpose statement.
Yeah. Yeah. So reading the terms of reference, I would certainly say the financial viability of the harbor and pressure that we experienced in 2022 on the rate increases, and I think the overarching environment, fiscal environment that everything is happening in. Harbour finances are certainly an issue. Further, long-term planning, I don't see how we can do any long-term planning without having a firm handle of what harbour finances are today and have a vision for harbour finances in the future. I mean, it seems to me very obvious that it's integral to any meaningful work this committee can do.
How far, what does an ideal situation look like from your perspective of like our access to that type of information? Like how far does this go, and somewhere between what city staff potentially, if they're willing to cooperate, could provide, as well as, what do we need to know or what would we like to know, and how far would that go?
Okay, we're currently on adoption of minutes, and this is an agenda item 7 point whatever. So I'm wondering if we shouldn't resolve the issue as it relates or as it applies to minutes, and then we can have this broader discussion later. Is that?
Adoption of minutes already.
No, we haven't.
No, we haven't got an adoption.
There's an adoption of agenda.
So basically made a motion. Does anybody have a second to the motion to change the,
To amend the minutes.
amend the minutes? And your amendment, if you want to replace the entire section with your,
I want to replace the first paragraph, the second paragraph The claim in here that the request for additional financial information was not denied is kind of ridiculous given the record, and I have a written record of denials. There's a, I don't know, a deflection here that said it wasn't denied. I was just shifted to another forum. It's the committee that requested the information. The committee has been told that, no, you can't have the information. That's a denial. I don't want to make this difficult. I want an accurate record. No, I'm not. Again, we're getting, the information was not provided. I submitted a series of questions, some applicable or pertaining to specific numbers, some more broad, high level, and I think very essential to understanding the financial health of the harbor, pertaining to the long-term loan, pertaining to how excess revenues are allocated. And I was told that all those requests exceed the scope of the committee. That's a denial.
Different interpretation of the data. Staff are willing to meet with you, but it is just, people are not available at this time. So,
The request was never for a private meeting. It was for information presented to the committee.
Gary's got something to say.
So the information, the financial report, which has been provided to the committee was sufficiently detailed for us to understand how the harbor operated. In my 25 years of professional experience reviewing budget reviews, it was what I would expect to see as a management review of it. It was an accurate, complete financial statement, and it was more than enough for this committee to operate on and know how the harbor is operating. So from the point of view of us making decisions, us understanding what's possible in the harbor, we have a clear view. They've told us what Transient Moorage is. They've told us what their costs are. We have a view. You seem to want to find something different, Ken, and you're wasting our time.
I take exception.
Pushing down on it. You can take us,
Well,
if I could finish speaking,
Oh, I thought you were.
you're wasting our time, and I think we should just say we've had enough financial information and move on to things that we actually have that's included in our terms of reference. This is a waste every time for us to be in conflict with city staff, and it's not gonna help us accomplish anything.
Can I suggest we table this for the time being? And then try to get the minutes adopted, and then we can move on. So I mean, definitely not throwing it under the off the bridge, or we just we should get this rolling along, because Jim's gonna show up and he's gonna wonder what the heck we're doing.
yeah.
Future meeting when we have more information, as we
Well, table what though? The amendment to the minutes?
Yeah, we have to.
Are we amending the minutes or not?
We have a motion on the table which we have to deal with. Which is a motion to amend minutes, which I think,
Okay.
as it's, I would, if you said to replace the first paragraph, I would vote yes. I'll vote no with replacing the amount you want to replace. So I think, are we ready to vote?
You feel like the financials are consistent?
I think they're accurately presented. It's, when you look at a summary, it always has
Inconsistencies.
inconsistencies in it, things you can dig at. It makes sense to me. It works.
The financials we have work, is that what you're saying?
I think your complaint is what the harbor costs us. What it's more. We can talk about that, but we don't have.
We'll get into more specifics under that item. I thought we're gonna try to do with the agenda.
So
Could
I think we want to
we,
follow.
could we take a vote on adoption of the minutes and the
We should vote on the amendment.
Adoption of the amended minutes.
on the amendment, yeah.
The amendment.
Now, what are we voting on? My proposed amendment was that
On accepting your proposed amendment, yes.
and it would replace paragraphs 1 through 3 as it's written in the original version.
So can we show of hands? Can you- Or? Pass?
Up.
Opposed?
Opposed?
That pass? Thank you.
Now I need to vote on the minutes.
Okay. After having reviewed the minutes, can we have a mover? And a seconder? All those in favor? Okay, do you have any delegations? Don't see none. Do we have any correspondence? Do we have any reports? Under reports, I wonder if I could ask Sasha to give us a report. There was a sinking in the North Harbor today, and I wonder if you could give us a verbal report. This wouldn't be official, but just seems he was the company that dealt with it. Maybe he can give us a report.
Yeah, I was called this morning by Jen, the Wharfinger, to report I think it was a 19-foot double eagle that had partially sunk at the dock. It was still tied to the dock.
Mhm.
So I just ran down there and made it unsunk.
You're able to pump it up, keep it full.
I was able, I didn't need a team to do it because it wasn't fully sunken. It was still tied to the dock. So I just slid a lift bag under one side and tied it to the dock and righted it and then pumped it.
Was there any fuel discharged overboard?
Nope. Pretty simple, easy thing. It was dealt with fairly quickly. I think we were maybe a couple hours sorting it out.
Move to unfinished business. This should be fun.
The first, when this was, the motions that were, the recommendations that were put forward by the committee, were brought to council, and that's with council's direction, so this is just informing the committee, of what council directed staff.
Didn't for everybody else. I watched the council proceedings on the webcast, and I thought there was an amendment to the motion. That was adopted by council.
I was at that meeting and I recall talk of an amendment, but I don't recall if it passed.
It passed. That's my recollection.
And I believe at that meeting, if I'm correct, Councilor Southcott
Proposed the amendment.
proposed the amendment that it came back to the table. Is that correct?
You don't want to be full limited, see ya. Fair enough.
Chair, how about we just follow up?
Are we ready for 6.2, Jessica? 6.2 deals with a home port vessel satisfaction survey, which would be similar to what we did last summer with the transient survey that apparently is still going on. There were copies to each of us handed out to the start of the meeting. So what we did with this, we had some meetings We had one at my house, there were several meetings, almost coffee meetings, could you say? I took a lot of phone calls, some emails, et cetera, from some commercial fishermen in North Harbor boaters, some just general questions and answer periods and stuff, and tried to form a base for this. And we had it upwards of around 30 questions. And then we tried to pare it down. And now we've got it to what most of the group has seen. They've all seen it via email over the last several months, but this is about as far as I can take it, and the people that I've worked with Fraser on it, I've worked with Rob, I've worked with Brian, Jesse, and several members of the voting public. So I'd like your thoughts on it and see what everybody thinks. And what I want to open up is the conversation about how will we distribute it? How will we collect it? Who will build the database? Those sort of questions. So, because quite frankly, the last one was fluff. It wasn't, there was too many softball questions. And the only thing that I felt that it pointed out was we lack laundry facilities. That's the only thing that it really identified. So hoping that this will satisfy some of the people that aren't like this in my ear all the time. So I'll open this up for some conversation.
Yeah, the one question that I would love to see on here is sort of what we talked about earlier in the year, where sort of what's the economic impact of the harbor. We don't really have a way to cast a net for that information, but this might be an interesting way to, a question that sort of phrase, outside of moorage, are you willing to share what you spend on your boat in the community per year? And that might be a really interesting, it's all voluntary. Is it accurate? I don't know, but is it an idea of how much money is being spent coming from the harbor and local businesses and anything, it could be upholstery businesses, whatever, and that sort of fuel those things in the community. That would give us an idea of, at least that's a very, very vague, but it's a start to some numbers of what comes through the harbor, through the harbor users. So I just would love to see a question that's sort of very loose, but just maybe if people are willing to share what they might spend and outside of the moorage costs. I think some of us who run businesses have an idea from specific clients, but not the harbor in general. And that might be a really surprising number. That could be a really interesting number to see.
Just for clarity, I had 3 questions similar to that, all with the same theme, on the latest draft, and tried to pare it down to a workable number that would nicely fit on one sheet and give enough room for comments. So those questions you had asked earlier, they were there, but they got scrubbed at the last minute.
Yeah.
So we can kick them farther down the road. And certainly not closing the door on that, but.
Yeah, it would be the one question I would love to see, because I feel this is a fantastic opportunity just to ask that question, but also it doesn't have to be a specific detail. This is not like a big detailed answer to it. It's just a really vague thing to figure out. Maybe there's a, hey, look, $5 million, $20 million, 500,000. We have no idea, but maybe that's what people spend in the community. It'd be really nice to have a really rough idea. From there, say, hey, that really works for facilitating businesses in the harbor, or talk about changing the potential for.
It's not going to be all that useful with the nature of the survey.
It's not, but we have nothing right now.
Yeah, but it's idiosyncratic data. I was going to say, maybe we need to edit 16 a little bit to pull out the staff reference and just talk about whether the docks are monitored on a regular basis to identify possible safety. And just pull the staff reference out. It's the same question. It's a little less sensitive.
Well, if somebody can suggest rewording on that, because I have been doing that job for 20 years, I can tell you that dock walks for safety and those kind of issues are paramount to the operation.
Yeah, they know what's going on behind the scenes on this. Maybe we can make it a little more sensitive. Just say that the docks are monitored on a regular basis to identify if you just change the docks on monitor on a regular basis, we'll,
So point the finger.
we'll just keep it a little cleaner.
So that would be number 16.
Yeah,
Okay. Replace harbor staff with docks are.
yeah, docks are monitored on a regular basis. That's,
Is that something that you can do easily, Jessica?
I think this questionnaire is gonna go through some revision before it falls dry. Like I'm sure staff will do.
I mean, I don't necessarily want to waste a whole lot of time with this one
Fair
either.
enough, yeah.
This is, you know, we could probably spend a couple, give us 3 to 5 minutes discussing some of the merits of this. And then, you know, we can put it into unfinished business for next meeting type thing, so.
That was my sort of an overarching comment. Are we clear on why we're doing this, how the results, whatever they say, are going to benefit the work we're doing or inform the work we're doing? Are we clear on that? Do we have it clear?
But to be fair, every member sitting here of our group has had versions of this delivered to their email box for several months now. So there's not a lot of commentary on it, so.
Fair.
I think it's reasonable, Jim.
Yeah, I do too.
Yeah, I mean, I think we could go ahead.
Chair, might I suggest that you have a question about whether the person answering is a resident versus not? That might influence how you look at question 19. It's a question up front, whether somebody from Fall River versus away. And then when you look at the responses to 19, you can gauge
Yeah,
whether out of towners think one thing versus local users.
yeah, the intent as wasn't to solve that issue, the intent was to identify the issue, right?
I think people can put down whatever answers they want to, whatever they think are in their best interest. So whether they tell you where they're from and whether they agree with a tiered rate system, who knows? We would never know. If I were filling out this survey, I would say I'm from Powell River, even though I wasn't. And no, I don't think we should have tiered rates.
Yeah, and that's the trouble with the survey, with
Exactly,
especially in our novice survey.
Bring up some stuff from before, and I think it's a measure of trust and about how surveys are done. So I think one of the key things in terms of the value of the survey is your trust in the information. And you have the option of having it administered by an external third party, doing it amongst yourselves, because I do want to acknowledge there was some challenges I thought I heard. And so there are times where myself with much bigger communities, we've done independent surveys that staff might have given feedback to me in the questions, but it's administered separately, likely separately, reports separately. So I couldn't ever be accused of having my 10 friends fill it all out, right? Just put it. And then it gives a measure of trust for everybody that it's not, you know, Mr. Bombardier's friends did it. So, but there's this cost to doing that. But then there might be a way of doing that. Oh, sorry, Mr. Bombardier, that was nothing.
I know who we hang out with. It's
I was just surprised you used plural with friends with Rob on it.
Yeah. As Jim mentioned when he was introducing this, some things that need to be addressed are the distribution of the survey and security, knowing that people aren't getting the questionnaire, making multiple copies, stacking the deck in their favor, whatever they want their results to indicate. There are, I think, are there 400 contract holders or something in that ballpark, or is that just North Harbour? But it may be just North Harbour, I'm not sure. But anyway, we could have hundreds of responses to process. That's going to be a big body of work, and I don't know who's going to do it.
Softwares
Yeah.
that can be independently administered, and you plug it in, feed it online, collect the data, and then any hard copies can be input. So the Harbour Committee can decide to ask council to set aside some resources from your budget, have somebody independent do it.
Okay.
It may not be a particularly high cost, it might be something local that we all trust. And they would use a free online platform, doesn't have to be terribly complicated. Maybe something that is with data housed in Canada type thing. And our corporate officer and deputy corporate officer might suggest some things that are suitable platforms. And those are free online ones. This is not terribly complex. And you have somebody independent that you hire. Budget.
There should be somebody to key in the data into the app.
Well, who would actually be in charge of making sure that you trust that they set it up, they put it in, everybody shares the links, but they administer the data that went out, right? So it's not staff, it's not any one of you, it's the data is what it is.
And the beauty being potentially if it's something online, I mean, it's the thing about it not necessarily being a hard copy, maybe it's a QR code that takes you to it, maybe it's the link, maybe whatever it is, but you're not necessarily filling it in at the Wharfinger's desk, with somebody watching you, it
For
might,
having the city do it, you'd probably do an email out to people and let them do it online.
yeah.
Since we have email addresses for some
Survey month.
reasonable number.
Yes, I hesitate to name a particular platform because I don't know where data is stored these days.
Right.
And so some places use SurveyMonkey, some use Simple Survey, and it's just about sensitivity, particularly some people may refuse to do surveys on certain platforms if they have to put in any identifiable information. So, but I'm sure we can come up with some suggestions, but exactly that might be a good one, but there might be others.
Is that something that we could lean on the city's IT department?
IT, education, communications, and we have enough staff that we could suggest
Okay.
a number of platforms that would be
So we have-
suitable and also free.
Okay, so we have two separate issues here. I'd like to get a motion to approve the questionnaire as received with the changes to number 16. And then the second, if we can get that moved first, we'll get that dealt with, and then we'll deal with the distribution and collection in a second.
I move to adopt the survey.
Okay.
Can I make that, can I make another, or propose another amendment to the questionnaire? I think, the series of, the series of 5 through whatever, that are all under the same direction, please select from the following statements, strongly, et cetera, et cetera. And then there's just single words there. That's going to, confuse people. The way those items were initially, envisioned, and that would be docks through parking. The preface to those questions would be, how satisfied are you with the condition of each of the following?
Right now, the best thing for survey is, and this is a really important one, you say, this will take you no more than 3 minutes, 5 minutes. Because people, it takes more than that. And then you try it out and you go, actually, that's a long way to do this. And if you can let staff mock something up and then you
And then
try it
come
out,
back to us for approval.
that's right.
Yeah.
Then, because some of them, as Mr. Colbert says, might be better framed in one way.
Okay.
So let us come back and then you edit that. So the direction would be, the committee recommend that council directs staff to,
Maybe mock up a survey.
yeah.
Okay, so
using-
because we didn't get as far as a seconder, we only got the motion.
Okay.
We could scrub that and have a new motion to ask this questionnaire to be forwarded to staff for a mock-up. To return to us for the final draft. Any movers? Sounds good. Oh, Jesse? Josh? All in favor? We're at 6.3, Jim.
Carry on, Jim, because I've got a headache and what turned into was supposed to be a 2-hour tour turned into 5, so. You just.
Okay, we're now at 6.3 Northwest Explorations Contract.
So through the chair, for
Jessica, I just want clarification. I know when Tor was here last time, you said they were working on a new contract, and I did speak with Robbie after our last meeting, and he said that there is no current contract in place for Northwest.
Yeah, I understand that the last one was more of a verbal and formal agreement, and so staff are working on, at some point that we'll be working on a new one, but I don't know where that's at, if it's started yet, or if it's likely to be for the next year.
Yeah.
This year, so.
Okay, so no, no, new, okay. And then just for reiterate the last meeting, they are paying for 160 feet of lineal dock space. Okay, so we did a measurement of A dock and the end of B dock, and they have 270 feet of usable space.
Is that the wave abatement?
No. No, it's
No,
not.
not in the waiver.
So it was, yeah. There's a few of us that measured it. So I want to pass a motion that they pay for 270 feet, so the other North Harbor users aren't subsidizing them for 110 feet. Am I able to do that?
Can I ask a related question?
Could I
Yeah,
suggest an amendment to that? What you're really concerned about is equity.
Yeah,
Could I suggest that we have a motion that all users of the harbor should be treated with equity? Equivalent. As opposed to us trying to get very specific about how many feet it is.
well,
That's what you're really concerned about.
that's fine, but they're paying for 160 feet of dock space. We got 100 feet left over, so if we're looking for revenue, shouldn't that 100 feet be sold to somebody else or paid for by the people using it?
Who then defines equitable? It's.
I mean, we're looking for revenue, right? So if we're giving away free dock space, wouldn't you like free dock space?
Yes, and that's why I'm thinking that I think your motion may be a little too specific. That's not what we want to do. What we want to do is that the city should be charging its tenants for these stuff used in an equitable fashion. That space is not quite as usable as the rest of the harbor.
Well, I disagree with that, but that's not my decision. That's not our decision as an advisory board. We're just advising council to fill out the lineal feet as it's being used. Like, I don't know, that's, if it's, yeah. It's not, don't wanna waste a bunch of time on it. It's just, I don't feel that I should be subsidizing people's moorage in the harbor as a North Harbor contract holder.
I would not pay the same rate I pay for my current space beyond that side of ADOC. I just wouldn't, because at low tides, it's not really usable, and the far end of it is also quite shallow. But those are questions which in depth need to be looked at and considered when making a fair. And I don't know whether it's fair or not, so I'm not making a judgment. But for us to say it's 210 feet and it's like all other feet in the harbor, that's just not true. It's not. It's more restricted to use,
Yeah, well,
and that's a fact.
if there were 18-foot boats there, you could probably charge out on that A dock. If that 170 feet of usable space, you'd probably charge out 160 on A dock, and then there's the 45 on the end of B. So you're actually getting more money for that, more revenue for that. You know, running it as a business.
Stuff, the short boats actually pay less per foot than the big boats.
That's right, and that would be a stipulation. Again,
I mean, this is it's a complicated question. I think your motion is too specific.
okay, well, like I say.
Although I think it's a question worth us raising the two that say there should be fair and equity between moorage rates.
I've got Ken and Councillor Palmer, and I've got something to add, so Ken.
I'll start by saying I agree with Jesse's point. I think the contract, the bylaw stipulates that 8 foot of dock space costs X dollars, and Northwest Explorations has assigned to it X feet of dock space. Most of that, the north side of ADOT, is not usable for, you can't fill the space with large boats. You could fill it with small boats, and there are 16 to 20 foot boats on the wait list now. which means that the city could be deriving revenue from every foot of the north side of a dock. If some people are concerned about the occasional low tide prohibiting them from coming or going, they can opt to decline the space. That's something that's commonly done, I think, at other marinas. The end of B dock is prime space. It's 45 feet of prime space. Oh, I should go back to another point on the north side of A dock. Whether Northwest Charters continues to use that dock, because it's only really usable in its entirety, small boats, you should only be paying the small boat rate, even though you're putting big boats in there. But you should be paying it for all 240 feet or whatever it is. And that, by the way, is at a rate of $7.12 a foot. Your fleet in Port Sydney Marine is paying $18 a foot, so you're still getting good value here. Yeah, the end of B dock is 45 feet, and if you continue to have that space on an annual basis, it should be at a rate of $9.90, the same as any other boat that, or the same as any other moorage customer would pay. I don't see that it's that complicated. I don't see how how you can go anywhere else without an amendment to the bylaw or a special exception to the bylaw put to council.
Thanks, Ken. Appreciate your comments. And before I make any comments, Robert, do you have anything you want to?
I'm gonna probably step outside because I feel it's a conflict of interest. And should not take part in any more of these conversations.
Okay, that's fine. Thank you, Rob. So, yeah, it's a genuine point, but you know, what I was gonna ask Rob is how many years have you been having the boats down there? And it's been quite some time, because I remember when we were dealing with it back in the day. And that was a special contract to get Cooper boats to come here and use some space that was available at that time. So I understand now, and I'm gonna ask staff, is the contract because of the name change up for renewal, or is there a time lapse on their contract? Okay, probably because of the name change. It's treated, and to be fair, you know, Rob's been in there a long time, and Cooper Boats has been paying. And we've given him a sweetheart deal, him in Northwest, because of the name change, and there were some issues around that, whether he should be looked at as a new tenant or not. So, you know, I think Northwest is gonna work with us and to the point, yeah, let's make it equitable. Let's charge a fair rate, whatever that rate may be, but let's send it back to staff to deal with and bring us a report when staff has the time to deal with it, so that we can all be on the same page in terms of what staff comes up with. Does that sound fair?
My comment was very similar to what you said. I have not seen the contract. Now, I have heard many times 160 feet, linear feet that they're paying for. But before we go out on a limb, we should see that in writing. We should see that paper contract. If it is 160, then we can analyze it versus the 240 to
270 feet.
270, okay.
And that's not the wave retention, that's.
Yeah, okay, so if we get the facts, that how many feet they're paying for, how many feet we could be paying for them, and come to a solution. Because right now, I know we've asked maybe 3 times at this level to see the contract, and I haven't seen it. And I was on staff when it was started, but it was not a backroom deal, but it was the mayor, the CFO, and the manager of Cooper Boating that put that together.
Chair, Fleming, around sharing people's individual contracts, there are not some guidelines and rules around that?
There are. It would depend if it contains third-party confidential information that was supplied. So there's a test it would have to go through to determine what's available and what isn't. It might be the whole thing's available, but we'd need to apply a test to it to know what's releasable and what isn't. And since I've not seen the contract either, I don't know what the outcome of that analysis would be.
Question, Jim?
And just to add further, Jim, in terms of coming up with something that's fair, I take the point, I hear the point that, you know, that north end of ADOC is got a lot of space, and there is a little bit of consideration in that regard for small boats to fill that, which is a lesser rate. All of that should be taken into consideration, and Jamie, welcome aboard. We know we've got staff people working for us.
Again, as I said earlier, getting really deep into those operation details. I might recommend if a motion, if the committee's wanting to make a motion, something more along the lines of that. The committee recommend that when reviewing moorage contracts, staff ensure that consideration, and I might get my wording wrong, but consideration is given to actual dock space use and accurate allocation of dock space. As opposed to singling out one client, as it sounds like you probably want that across the board. And so making maybe a broader motion like that is something I might suggest.
Could I suggest some wording to that effect?
Jesse has a good motion.
Oh,
So I said I'd like to make a motion
Okay.
that, you know, like, at the end of the day, it's not, doesn't matter who it is. It's just that if there's X amount of dock space somebody's occupying, you can't put another boat there because they have it reserved for whoever holds that contract, well, there isn't one, but whoever is using it. We're leaving money on the table if we're allowing them to have on ADOC, which I think was 175, and then plus the other, if they're, or sorry, 225, if they're having that whole length that nobody else can use, they should be paying for the whole length. We shouldn't be leaving money on the table when we're again, when we get to the financial part of it. I don't know how we're gonna pay our loan back, but the numbers don't make sense. So why are all us other North Harbour people, contract holders, subsidizing one length of dock? You know, that's in sense, that's what we're doing. We're subsidizing a commercial company that's, you know,
American.
based in the
American
States,
company,
that's occupying a whole bunch of dock space.
and boats that are owned by people who live God knows where.
Yeah, and if you look at their first paragraph of their statement on their website about putting your boat in a charter fleet, it states out on my phone, it says, sign your boat up, you're guaranteed private, secure, good, I can look at it, I can read word for word, good moorage in private, or in harbors. So again, it's, I don't know, I think we're leaving money on the table. I don't think it's fair to the other contract holders.
I don't think anybody here is trying to get rid of Northwest Charters.
No.
Hoping Northwest Charters will leave. I think and hope that they stay. I think what our position is, and on behalf of all North Harbour users and the city, that we should be deriving full revenue for that space. To do anything less is to subsidize it. We can fill that dock tomorrow with boats on the wait list. The other thing is, the point I want to make is that it's not like we're pricing, we're going to be putting undue financial duress on the charter company. If the charter company is economic, paying $18 a foot in Sydney, and undoubtedly more than that in Bellingham, it'll be economic here paying $7.12 a foot for maybe 50 feet more than they can actually use.
I think that it's a mistake for us to get specific about a particular company. I think Justin's point's good. We should talk about all the mortgage users should be paying a fair price for their usage. And we happen to think right now, one of the mortgage users is not receiving a fair price, and we'd like staff to address that. I think a more general motion from us is more appropriate. And they all know that we actually think they're making a problem with that particular space. But I do think we've got to acknowledge it's a different space than the rest of the harbor. But that's a personal opinion, but we're going to ask staff to look at it and choose a reasonable price.
And you're right, but again, you know, when Jim was in Warfordshire, like he said, when that dock was built, a dock was designed for 18 to 20 foot boats, and it was modified to accept Cooper.
So
So
remember
you could
that
have filled that whole spot with 18 to 20 foot boats and charged out.
Tori gave us some history
Yeah,
on this, and the
Yeah.
fact is they were worried at the beginning that they weren't gonna be able to fill the harbor
that's right,
up.
that's right.
And so the deal with Cooper was both to get Cooper here.
Yeah.
And fill up some of the dock space.
Absolutely.
And so in fact, there was a handshake agreement, it appears, from everybody involved that they didn't write down. So they do have a contract, they signed the contract just like all of us do.
That's right.
Every year. But the handshake agreement about how to charge that contract is one that we think maybe should be reviewed again now. But I think us making a motion about the fairness of charging for all the board members is more appropriate for us as a committee as opposed to
Which is fine.
identifying a particular entity and identifying what we think ought to be the final result.
No, absolutely, absolutely. And on that same note, if you have a 45 foot spot and you choose to put a 20 foot boat in it because you haven't bought a 45 yet, you're paying for 45 feet, not 20.
Right.
So, you know, as far as the harbor goes down for every user, it's already been
Right.
stated that that's the way it works. So it's, yeah, anyhow,
So
sorry.
move along, Fraser's next,
Yeah.
and I've got a comment.
Yeah, just my comment is just, you know, we're talking about equity for harbor users. You know, we also have different, is everybody paying for their exact slip size? Because there are also some boats that seem to be pushing that limit a little bit too. You have boats with engines up that are, you know, and what. And this is the thing of, if it's about equity, how far do we go down this rabbit hole? I think that, you know, you count 200 and whatever feet for Northwest. That's a number that should be brought into the 21st century to say, hey, this is what you pay for. But as far as actually, you know, making sure that it's an equitable endeavor for all North Harbor users, that's also sort of puts that at priority. Where if we're not just looking at one entity, you know, you could say American-based company, you could say it's a business, it's commercial, or is this just a question for the whole layout of the marina? Is everything paired properly in the way that it could be best used? Because maybe there's.
So I think that accomplishes if we say we just want fairness.
I guess this will be the
Move on.
last comment on this one, but in your standard moorage agreement, there's a clause that says your billing length would be this overall length of your boat or the size of the slip, whichever is greater. So the city would be well within their rights to measure that off, and if it's 240 feet, I mean, if you're looking back at the way the moorage contract reads, yeah, it's probably justified to.
So, but if there was a handshake agreement, that actually has some validity. So that
But it might be time to get a written contract in, because
I agree.
because if I'm, maybe I'm not right here, but I understand it's a verbal agreement, not so much a paper agreement. So source that out.
But I agree that there's some questions and we think the city staff ought to look at those questions if we could leave it there and not try to.
Are we moving the right direction?
What was the motion? Jessica was, oh,
So
sorry.
there isn't actually one, we don't have a formal written motion, but I'm starting to work it here. I've written up what could be a motion here, and I'm just gonna, before I read it, this might future-proof for what Rob Stokes has alluded to in previous meetings, that other harbors, you don't rent a 15 spot, you rent a spot, and it's up to the staff to decide where your boat goes to make the harbor work and fit. Which kind of leads towards your fair and equitable usage of the North Harbor. So what I've kind of just roughly drafted up here would be the motion that staff consider fair and equitable moorage for all North Harbor users as applicable to the rules and bylaws of the city of Powell River.
Just looking at.
That work?
Absolutely. As applicable to the rules, as the bylaw applies. I think it's a better.
Yeah, if you want to reword that a little bit better.
Better phrase it, yeah. I mean, I think what we're asking for is apply the bylaw.
And just to clarify, this motion will go to staff, not to council. It'll go to staff first.
To staff, I guess, yes.
Okay, Sasha, can you repeat that for Jessica, please?
The motion that staff A motion to
It just referred to.
Should we just say the
refer
position?
to staff of fair and equitable moorage for all North Harbour users
As
as
set
per,
out in the bylaw.
as per the City of Powder River bylaws and harbor rules.
As per bylaw.
And I think that if
Could
they
do that,
take
yeah.
that and look at that, that kind of goes to the fair and equitable for everybody, and it allows future proofing towards
Yeah.
other operations that might take place in the harbor.
Let's hear from staff what they think of that one.
I'm very new to this group, so I want to start with that. Just, that's awesome. Just looping back to when we talked initially about our mandate, your mandate for this committee, and that it's advice to council. The only question I would have is it appropriate? And I look to Stephen for that, Mr.
He's got his hand up.
Over Mr. Fleming, if it's the same
Mr. Fleming, go ahead.
thing I'm thinking.
Yeah, so yeah, just further to our other conversation, any recommendations from the committee go to council. So you'd be, recommending that council direct staff to do this. So, in your terms of reference, you're an advisory committee to council, not an advisory committee to staff.
We might have to reword the motion then.
Could have to put council instead of staff.
Any motion we make goes to council.
You got that,
Can
Jen?
I ask a question of, I'm sorry, I don't know the gentleman's name on the online.
That's fine.
Question, if I may, if an agreement is reached with Northwest that is non-compliant with the bylaw, would it have to be approved by council?
Mr. Fleming?
Well, it's a bit of a hypothetical question without knowing the terms of the contract, because the way contracts and bylaws can interact, they can sometimes contradict each other. In this case, I think there's enough concerns raised to warrant staff taking a closer look at everything that's been raised today. So I've seen contracts that are not compliant with bylaws and contracts that are. So it depends on the circumstances over my 27 years in the business. So I can't give you a definitive yes or no answer because it always depends on the circumstances.
So if I may, under some circumstances, staff would have the authority to negotiate a contract that is not compliant with the bylaw?
It really depends on the wording and what authorities have been delegated to staff.
Okay, yeah.
At the time the contract was entered into.
Tim, just for clarity, when
And
we
certainly,
used to.
The committee's made some comments to, handshake deals made at a time at some point in the past. That's generally not the way. Those can be problematic from a legal perspective.
So just to clarify through the chair, Mr. Fleming, so you have heard the talk around this issue. So there needs to be some clarity when this motion comes forward to council to deal with.
Yep.
So I'm assuming there will be some kind of staff report that comes along with it.
Yes. Yeah. And I think further on the agenda, there's some clarity on that process, and it's helpful for staff to hear what the committee has to say, and then we can craft that in an appropriate way for recommendations to council. The issue did come up. Jessica and I did speak about the name change earlier this year. It wasn't. We didn't pursue it to any definitive conclusion, but it's something that is that we're aware of and does warrant further looking into by staff, in my opinion.
It does?
Yes.
Question maybe Jamie can answer or Jim can answer. When we refer to staff, are we also mention, it goes without saying, staff and management? Yeah, okay.
Yeah, staff is a generic term for, those employed by the city of Powell River.
Thank you.
Okay, so we have a motion on the floor Doc, have you got that? Could you reread that?
We have Jessica read it out here.
Let's have
Jessica,
Jessica read what she's got there.
The committee recommends staff to ensure that fair and equitable moorage for all North Harbour users as per the city of Harbour North Harbour bylaw.
So that would be a motion to council, not staff. We have to, it's a motion to council to direct staff.
Committee recommends, yeah.
Yeah, okay. Do we have a second?
We have a second.
All those in favor? Opposed?
Okay, the next one is 7.1 bylaws and parking. I don't know who brought that. I don't know who brought that.
I put that on to talk to Jim about.
Can we just wait?
Yeah, we'll wait for Rob and the other guys.
So Rob, in your absence, we had a motion to go through that we want staff to review and do a fair and equitable contract for all mortgage contract holders. So, and that will go to council to direct staff to do that.
As set up in the bylaw.
So this is more of a question, I guess, for clarification. Bylaws and parking. I know, well, I don't want to speak for Rob, but I know there has been some problems with, well, I shouldn't say problems, but I mean, motorcycles being parked down there that are out of the way, that are getting ticketed. And I think there was a trailer that, for some reason. And the question I had was, as everybody here I'm sure knows, like Fraser, I own a marine business. I have several commercial trailers and a big truck, and I have several service vehicles. We do remote service calls, and I purchase parking passes for my remote service vehicles every year to park at the South Harbour, the North Harbour, and do service calls and maintenance on transit and so forth. I also have a big commercial trailer with a big commercial truck that I launch and haul out North Harbour, mainly North Harbour boats. The odd transient in the summertime, but it's mainly North Harbour people and South Harbour. So what I do with that truck is I pull the boat out, service it, bring it back, launch the boat. I usually park in the upper parking lot, so I'm not taking up the tie down area. And I'm usually gone for about 15 minutes. So last 3 weeks ago, I got a parking ticket in a commercial vehicle up in the parking lot, and wasn't a busy day. There was nobody there. Like I said, the only reason I go up there is not to plug up the trailer tie down area when you park a boat, like every boat owner does. So is that something that as businesses, I know Fraser doesn't have a big trailer, but I know there's several businesses in town that do. Is that something that's new, that we're gonna have to start buying parking tickets for that kind of stuff for 15, 20 minutes of parking to put North Harbour boats back in their slips?
Where were you parked? Above the,
I parked in the trailer parking lot because they didn't want to plug up. Well, you know,
Yeah.
if my truck and trailer is, they didn't want to plug it up there if somebody came in.
Your truck doesn't have a parking pass?
My truck doesn't because it's always pulling a big hydraulic trailer. And like I said, I have parking passes in my other vehicles for when I'm down doing service calls, but the truck's only moving boats from A to B. So I mean, like, it's probably selfish for me to ask. I don't have, if I have to buy a parking pass, I'll buy a parking pass. But it just seems to me, I've been doing this since I was 15 years old. I started moving boats when I had my license at 16. I've been doing this for a long time in that harbor, and I've never ever had a problem. And I've talked to other shops and they do exactly the same thing. They've never had a problem. It's just, and I phoned and talked to Bylaws, and I was kind of told that it's been like that forever, and that's just the way it is when I try to dispute my ticket. So anyhow, I just wasn't sure what the thoughts were, what the protocol is, but to me, it seems a little bit ludicrous, but that's my opinion.
It's a question how the bylaws person would know.
Well, they would know because it says McDonald Marine, and it's, obviously it didn't go up.
Don't know
close
how
to
long
2
it's
weeks.
been there for.
Well, there's gotta be some, at the end of the day, common sense has to prevail. Like, I know that's a word you shouldn't use nowadays, but
I believe before going to court, I believe there's a method of challenging the ticket at the counter with the supervisor.
yeah, And I know, I had a phone call with her, it didn't go anywhere, but I was gonna go down. Anyhow, that's not, it was just for clarification on stuff like that, like, you know, if Rob's down there with his trailer and he's unloading whatever for the next boat to go out, you know, and he's in, you know, he have a pass on his truck, but if he unhooks the, you know, like, it's, I guess it's a gray area. It's just kind of, again, it kind of goes back to, you know, a little bit of common sense. Anyways.
Right.
Yeah, I know, because if you're in the upper area, the parking pass for the lower North Harbor is still valid for there if it's on the vehicle park. I imagine if they saw that on there, they would have skipped it. Yeah, you wouldn't get a ticket. I have had issues when I was doing charter that a guest returned their parking pass to me. And by the difference between walking down the dock and turning back, they got a ticket. Right? It was just like totally unfortunate timing. I have disputed it with the bylaw or the payment downstairs, and they said, oh, that's the mistake. I said, here's the situation. They waived it and said, you know, just let your client know it's not an issue. Then I've also, you know, lived in Vancouver long enough where you think you just pull into that spot and grab that thing and run out and they nail you. Sometimes it's it's just like, you're not sure whether it's like poor timing. We take that risk as well. And that sometimes it's the luck of the draw. And, you know, I do buy I do pay the parking pass, you know, every year because I just know that I don't want a ticket, but at the same time, it's also luck of the draw sometimes in my personal vehicle or anything like that. Yeah.
Councillor Pump?
So I just want to clarify your situation. How many vehicles does your business own?
Well, I got 4, but I got 3 service vehicles.
And how many have parking passes?
The service vehicles that are down there servicing have parking passes. The big truck and trailer don't because they go down, they pull out, they leave, they launch, they park a boat, they go, like, it's like a 15-minute.
So this is your truck and trailer that you parked up top because it's the bigger unit.
Yeah,
right?
yeah. This
How's your
valid
business name, and this is in the middle of the winter and the parking lot was probably
Yeah,
pretty sparse.
There's nobody there. Yeah.
Mr. Fleming, has he got a basis to come to front counter and appeal that one more time or not?
Actually, I'll take a step back and be so bold as to suggest this is a completely inappropriate topic for the committee to discuss. The gentleman who raised it, I'm not sure, well, it's a valid concern of his. It's questionable whether it's actually, you know, appropriate thing for the committee to discuss, given it involves a committee member. You're treading very closely to the conflict of interest provisions. And so my recommendation is, sorry, I don't know anyone's name, but Councillor Palm, that be pursued with staff directly by the individual who first raised it, and you have no more discussion of this as a committee.
Perfect. Okay, thank you, Mr. Fleming.
Okay, thank you. So we're gonna move on to 7.2, Harbour Management Reports for Council. Now, I brought this forward. I've watched a couple of recent council meetings. And in particular, when we were stuff that moved from this committee to council, and then individual councillors were asked to vote upon things. And in one particular one, Councillor Dowd was he was asking questions, was very unsure of what was going on. And the next meeting, Councillor Southcott got up and praised our activities and our passion and what we were doing. Councillor Palm did the same. But I noticed, you know, there's a voting body of 7 people there. And watching that, I had no confidence that they knew what they were voting on. Zero confidence. Like so what I'm going to suggest, and I'll make a motion to it later, but this is a talking point now. I think reports are a standard issue coming from various departments in the city. And I would like to see those, and I've checked, council was not receiving reports, activity reports for the harbor. Okay, so I've already established that. I'd like to see things like conferences they attend, workshops, training workshops, electrical, firefighting, that sort of thing that harbor staff can attend. I'd like to see reports come back to council. And if council feels they can share with us, it will help us in doing our job, because council we can't expect council to vote on things that they're not clear on. Now, if in a report, if something comes up to them and they go, I don't really know what you're talking about here, they can get a hold of Councillor Palm and can walk them through it, or they can get a hold of staff or whatever. So in some of the things that I used to make reports on that I think were valuable, because I used to sit in one of these chairs for 20 years as a member of the Transportation Committee. So I would give verbal reports, written reports on if I went to a conference, if I went to a zone meeting, etc. I would report on traffic, you know, a weekly report on the traffic, but in a monthly form, right? So transient traffic for each week. We're not talking about launch codes or classified documents here. Capital projects that were done or are planned for the future. And that's a big point. If we find out that, okay, we gotta do some pile drive, gotta do some dredging, etc. Council needs to know that stuff. Maintenance issues that staff attended to, including water system, electrical system, crane maintenance, oil spills, environmental issues, including sinkings. Perfect today, I think we had one. That's not out of the realm of what we could expect from staff. Reports on conferences, workshops, training, etc. We also are a member of the Harbour Authority Association of British Columbia, who has zone meetings and conferences. So if staff attends those, they should be reporting to council. Maybe their supervisor gets these reports. We don't know, but council's not getting them, and in turn, we're not getting them. So to that effect, I'd like to make a motion that we direct council to have staff report to council, and if council sees fit, they can copy us.
So just a clarifying question, Jim, when you were working the harbor and you were on the transportation committee and your reports, how often did you file them?
Well, we had a monthly meeting. Every now and again it was council for whatever, but I would be on the hot seat with Councillor Astrop and Mayor Carlson and the boys. So a lot of times it was a verbal.
So there was one councillor and the mayor always attended that meeting, or what about the rest of the
and
council?
staff? There were these, well, because it was airport
They
harbor.
didn't go to the council meeting though, did they?
They didn't go to a council meeting. No, it was prior to council. So and there would be usually a couple of council members, lots of times the mayor. And then of course the written reports, if you went away or attended a conference, that was automatic. They just, Neil Francis Scooty was my supervisor back in the day, and he wanted those things. He wanted to know what I was doing. So
that brings up the issue, when we ask for reports, where are they gonna go?
well,
Exactly.
again, it's not launch codes. We're talking about.
There is no transportation committee, that's.
Right, okay, so basically it would be stemming from the harbor office to go to council so that you guys can make informed decisions. And if you feel like sharing that with us, so we can make informed decisions, that's great. Okay,
Would it not go through staff? I mean, it's sort of a chain of command to be presented to council. Like if you're talking about the wharfager would prepare the reports. And I would think submit them to her supervisor, her manager, whatever it is, who would then pump it up the line eventually.
well,
Is that what you're envisioning?
and that's the thing, like we don't even know if those reports are being made. And I believe that sort of, that's on discussion for later about how to procedures for presenting committee recommendations to council. That falls in that same parameter, I would think.
Except you're talking staff doing your report in this case, you're not talking a committee recommendation.
Yeah, I'm talking about just a simple staff report. Yes.
And as I said to you, I think it's presumptuous us to tell council about what reports they should be getting. That's, I mean, as Ken said, there's a way the reports get done. And the senior management decides what to present to council, and council decides what data they need for making the decisions. I think it's really presumptuous us to say council should be getting all the operation reports out of the harbor. I mean, think about it, Jim, for a minute. Should they get all the operation reports for everything in the rec center? Should they get all the operational reports?
Yeah, I
for
think they do, Terry. I honestly think they do.
You think they should read all the operations reports, everything in the
I
city?
think council should be as well informed as they possibly can be. And you spoke of your 25 years experience in your career, and I can speak of 20 years in my career. So, Fraser?
Yeah, I have some concerns about, city staff time, the time allocated. Is that time not spent walking the dock instead for somebody, or is that they're writing a report instead. The other thing that I had concerns about though was regarding the meeting where we did make those motions and recommend them to council, and then they were sent back to city staff and then went back again. And I always have concerns about city council being up to date. I know that generally there's some harbor users in council, and I think that keeps them fairly aware, but there's also a bunch of councilors who are not part, have no interest in and aren't aware of what's going on at the harbor. And that sent our motions back to city staff. I wonder if there's a way to bring, I would appreciate the component of the report because it would hopefully bring people up to speed. When the information went back to council, I emailed everybody regarding the motions of a little breakdown to sort of explain why I thought they were important. But that was all that I was able to provide. And then things did get passed, which was great. But at the same time, I'm curious what the best way for information to flow is. The report necessarily, or is there another way to keep all of council up to speed on the recommendations that might come from the Harbour Committee that way? Because I feel there are people who don't know, and when they don't know, they can't make an informed decision. Is a report the way to do it? I'm not exactly, I feel that could be a large allocation of somebody else's time where it may not be super important for every decision they make. So it could be a waste of time in some senses, but in another sense, I want there to be a flow of information so that council is making informed decisions.
Councillor Pond?
So that brings up a good report when you look at it in that manner. Staff time being a valued commodity these days. But this committee may be the sounding board for that report. If it comes from, we can have Jen come here once every couple of months, report to us on what she's up to, what's going on. And that way minutes are taken and they're passed on to council. Or I will be able to follow up and report when I'm going through the minutes of our meetings. That might be a logical way to do it. So I'm just throwing that out there. I don't know what Mr. Fleming thinks about that idea, but maybe you'd like to comment.
Yeah, thanks, Councillor Palm. Yeah, so from a governance perspective, the harbor is one of hundreds of services that Powell River offers its citizens and its residents and visitors. And it would be impractical for council to get a report on a regular basis of every service that is ongoing at an operational level. Council sets the policy direction, sets the level of service. They do that through their bylaw, and then it's up to staff to implement that level of service set by council through their policy, bylaws, or budget decisions. Council gets your minutes. They go to they're part of the agenda package. It's a responsibility of council members to read their council package. And when we'll get to the later in the agenda about how your recommendations get to council, one thing that occurred when your recommendations came previously is they were on the agenda just as the recommendations with no context. I believe Councillor Paul might have been away at the time, and council wasn't sure what to make of them. So it's a best practice for recommendations from committees to go to council with comments from staff, so council can make that informed decision you want them to, and would only go to council once. So it wouldn't go twice. It would go your recommendation with staff comment, council can make a decision.
So what about the concept of having our harbor head harbor reporting to this committee on a every quarter, for example?
Yeah, that would be for if council, so that could be a recommendation that you make to council. Like we would like to get regular input. So Jamie is here, so partly his role is to provide some form of update. I know you're new to this committee, Jamie. And so, that's part of his role to being here, will be to provide updates, that are that are relevant and within your mandate. But it's not for the committee to sort of summon other staff to present to them. And I said, Jamie's the liaison on that. And so that's would be my sort of comment on that.
Sounds good. So, how often, what kind of reports are we looking for, Jim, to narrow it down? So Jamie's got some idea of the concept that you're gonna try to make this as simple as possible.
Okay, I got some notes I can give to you after. Do you want them read out? Or I can just give you the sheet. Basically, reports coming back from any workshops or training seminars that are attended. Okay, any oil spill or environmental issues, including sinkings.
Why don't you just give him you read them once, why don't you just give him a copy of the paper?
Yeah, I asked him and he was nodding.
Oh,
So I'll give this to you. I've scratched out just while we were sitting waiting for the meetings to start, so.
So we'll let you massage that and give us a report on it at our next meeting. How does that sound? Oh, does this have to go through
We
council?
didn't go that far. I put the motion on the floor, but I didn't ask for a second or anything.
I think it's a really useful list that Jim's made that might help Jamie see some of the things that he could look at the harbor. So I think that's good work, Jim.
Okay.
Yeah, that's.
Yeah, if you want clarification on any of that stuff, by all means.
Sure, through the chair, I'm, as part of getting up to speed on all the current issues and challenges and operations, this helps me tremendously figure out what's important to you.
Cool.
I think if there's, as time goes on, if you specifically want a specific report in, then I think it would be appropriate to likely go through a request to council for something specific on that, but this helps me.
I'll write my phone number on there, and then if you want to call me at your leisure.
So we'll just, go right ahead. Yeah, I'm not sure, but go right ahead.
It's kind of been rattling around in my head and it kind of liaisons into this a little bit. We'll see what you guys all think about it. What do you guys think about the idea of this harbor committee writing a report? At one time, this is what we see, this is what we think, report, here it is.
On an annual basis, or what do you
No,
think?
well, I'm just thinking a one-time thing.
A one time.
This is a report. This is what we think about the South Harbor and what needs to happen in beautification. This is what we think about the West New Harbor and the maintenance issues that are there. This is what we think about the North Harbor and what's going on there. This is what we think, one time. Here's a big report, take it.
And that's to council? Or
Council
to
staff,
everybody?
Staff, council, maybe even the public, I don't know.
Pay them all in the same brush.
Here you go. Here's what we think. What do you think?
I mean, it would take a collective.
It would take a fair
lot
bit
of
of
collective
commitment to do it.
It's a lot of work, but it makes sense and it fits in part of our mandate.
I'm rattling around in my head because there's a lot of issues, a lot of things, and I've been like, I should just write a big letter and be like, here you go, take it.
Report to Harbour Users also. Makes sense to me.
You want to polish that and bring it to the meeting?
Yeah.
As in write the report or polish the proposal?
Yeah.
Which did you mean?
Whichever you prefer.
Okay. If you guys are kind of on board with it or whatever, I'll start polishing it. Sure.
Okay.
Great idea.
Well, would it be reasonable to draft an outline and get some input on that?
Yeah, I'll start drafting things up and maybe I can get somebody who's here, there and everywhere and you can start. Maybe by next meeting, we'll have something.
Very good. So you're comfortable with that, Jamie? That's why I just want to make sure you're fine with that.
Okay, so that's 7.3. So 7.4, procedure for presenting committee recommendations to council. I believe that's yours, Ken?
It is, yeah. You went past,
7.
oh, that.
Mandate, I thought we covered the 7.3, Harbour Users Advisory Committee mandate.
Yeah, I mean, we did discuss that a fair bit. I'm not sure where it was left. the staff has taken a position that it has. I don't want to rehash everything. From my vantage point, I don't think they have authority to arbitrarily make that decision. Terry's view is that we have all the financial information we need to go about the work we're doing here. I strongly disagree with that. I don't see why this has become the issue that has become, to be honest. The information I requested has to be public record. It's not like it's confidential or sensitive or anything else. It's pretty basic. I think the information could have been provided at the initial request, and we all could have moved on with applying the information to the more material work we're doing. That is broad, overarching context that I think is essential. And if you want a couple of examples, all the information we have to date is consolidated, revenues and expenses for all three harbors. We only discovered, I think, kind of unintentionally, but that's not in fact how the city keeps the books. They have a separate set of revenue and expenses for Westview and South Harbor, and another one for North, which makes total sense. But it also means that, for example, all the work we've been doing to try to increase transient traffic and transient revenue goes into the South Harbor revenues, and any excess in South and Westview Harbor revenues over expenses goes to the Buildings and Infrastructure Fund. Does not benefit anybody in the North Harbor at all. Does not benefit the North Harbor Reserve, etc. It is a discrete fund, goes into the Buildings and Infrastructure Fund, and from there it can be used for a multitude of things. And God knows there's a long enough list of such things that the city needs to address. North Harbor, which has its own set of expenses and revenues, there's an understanding in place that revenues in excess of expenses will be allocated to the North Harbor Reserve and some to the city in lieu of taxes. And so, city general revenues, it disappears into the city, into the city. And don't dispute that it's put to good purposes, and there is a lot of need for revenue. But we don't know how the division of those excess revenues is made. Who decides? Say, just to pull a number out of the air, say there's $250,000 in revenues over expenses. Part of that's going to go to the North Harbor Reserve. Part of that's going to go to the city in lieu of taxes. Who decides, and what is it based on? Now, I think when I brought this up a couple of meetings ago, Lisa mentioned that would be council's direction. I don't recall, and I have been paying very keen attention, I don't recall council giving any direction on that. The problem with that is that we don't know. The city has an insatiable appetite for revenue. They're losing $4 or $5 million, or a good part of it, off the industrial tax base. So we need some shared understanding, or more than an understanding. There has to be something concrete in place that determines how those revenues are split. And then the committee can go about trying to increase revenues in the North Harbor, comfortable with the knowledge that North Harbor users are going to benefit from any increase in revenues in the way of reduced pressure on moorage rate increases, for example. Another area that I've requested clarity on is the status of the long-term loan. The long-term loan right now is not on schedule to be repaid by 2041. To repay that loan by 2041, I think we have to add about another $100,000 a year to the principal payments being made.
Excuse me, Ken, that appears to be part of 7.5, the finances?
They are merged. Yes, it's hard to discuss one without bringing out the other. I meant to mention that at the beginning.
Really, at this point, you'd really want to say that you think finances should be added as part of our mandate.
Well, I think it is. I think it is part of our mandate. I don't see how anybody came to the conclusion that it isn't. And if we can just clarify that and get collaboration happening here, we can get on with the work we're supposed to be doing. So if there is still a disagreement between us and city administration as to whether or not we should receive that information, then I suggest we put a motion to council, asking council to clarify.
Can we actually get a sense of the committee whether we actually think we need that level of detail? This is what it comes down to. I think we don't.
Can you explain how you arrive at that position?
No, I don't. I'm tired of talking about this.
Just an arbitrary, oh, okay.
Do we,
It's not helpful, but okay.
do we think that we need this level of detail? That we need to know the accounting principles that the city's using to allocate resources?
Nobody's
How they-
asking for accounting principles.
That's what you're asking when you're talking about how they allocate the costs.
Well, that's not an accounting principle. That should be direction from council, that X dollars should go here and the Y dollars should go there or more.
Do we want to keep talking about this as a committee, folks?
You asking for a show of hands?
That's what I think I want to.
You think I'm wasting everybody's time?
I do.
Yeah, I mean, that's your opinion. I don't think anybody else does.
Yeah, just a point of clarification. I want to refer to our person with a lot of experience in this regard, Mr. Fleming. When I look at our Harbour User Advisory Committee terms of reference, I see work plans, objectives, operations, issues and improvements, long-term planning, coordinating feedback and communication between Harbour's users, Harbour staff, council, and other matters referred to the committee from council. That is a very broad, generic term of reference. So for staff to say that finances in terms of where revenues go, is that out of the scope of this committee?
A couple of things that I'll just sort of address that have come up, just for information and then get more specific to your question, Councillor Palm. So the city is required to follow what are called PSAB, Public Sector Accounting Board rules when it comes to accounting. In terms of annual surpluses of the budget, they go to council, not on a one-off basis, but a collective. These are the surpluses from 2024. Here's how staff recommend they be allocated. So that's how any surplus of monies, regardless of which revenue source they come from, are allocated to different reserves or other areas, but that is council's direction, and it comes usually as one document once the surplus for the previous fiscal year is known. They're not, like I said, they're not brought individually by account. And I believe, if I recall correctly, the question was staff wouldn't give the committee a level of detail beyond which council gets. And so the level of detail, if I remember correctly, that was provided to the committee is the same level of detail that's provided to council. And so that formed part of the basis of the staff response as to, this is what council asked for, this is what we give to council, this is what the committee gets.
Thank you for that. Thanks for the clarification.
Now, you're free to ask for whatever you want. That it ultimately be up to council if they think that's a good allocation of staff time to give the committee whatever level of detail you can agree on requesting.
And the reason I didn't answer your question is because I've already said it before, and I get tired of you repeating the same things over and over. Well, why you want it. So it's the 5 minutes of why you. I've heard that at least 4 or 5 times before.
Yeah,
And
well,
I didn't.
you know what, Terry?
I want to know whether we ought to continue talking about finances at this level.
First of all, there was a bylaw in place that all excess revenues, and I'm speaking largely to Mr. Fleming there. There was a bylaw in place that all excess revenues from North Harbour would go to the North Harbour Reserve, and that bylaw was modified, but I don't think it was canceled, whatever. Following the 2022 rate increases, which were intended in part to generate tax revenue for the city. So that is a special consideration that applies to harbour revenues over other city profits. There is an understanding that a North Harbour Reserve will be established by 2041, sufficient to support the rebuilding of North Harbour. That's another consideration. There's a long-term loan in place with a balance currently of 4.2 or $4.3 million that was taken out, I think, I don't know, 16 or so years ago, and has a maturity date of 2041. But based on the principal payments over the last several years, there's going to be a significant outstanding balance still. I've asked for clarification on these. These aren't details. These are broad overarching pictures to understand what the financial viability of the harbor is. And why it's important to me as a committee member is I'm volunteering my time. I put a considerable amount of time into these meetings, and I had been prepared to put a considerable amount of time into other proposals over the winter to generate what I hoped would be significantly more transient revenues. But until I hear that any benefits of that work aren't just going to disappear into the city's general revenue fund, I have no incentive or motivation to carry on. That's the problem.
So unless you personally benefit, then you're not interested in what the.
North Harbour users benefit, Terry. I am a North Harbour user. So are you. Yeah, I know. But
I'm here to help the city understand the harbor and run it better, not to benefit by lower moorage.
Well, I feel an obligation to all the North Harbour users who were freaked out in 2022 because they were going to be priced out of the harbor.
So I repeat the question, folks. Is this what we want to do to continue to dig deeper and deeper into the finance?
It's not deeper and deeper. Please quit mischaracterizing.
We've got several layers. We've had several layers of stuff.
We have not.
Councillor Palm's got the.
Yeah, so I don't want to get into the weeds and get into the argument phase that we're
in an
got going
argument
on right now, but I just want to say, make a general statement, and that is, I understand where you're coming from, Ken. You want to know the details and how that loan gets paid off. But at the same time, when we had a mayor here that, as a businessman, he made the judgment that our harbor is a business and it's to benefit the city. So that's why some of the funds from our reserve were used for general revenue purposes for the city. That was the decision. So that's what you're fighting here. That is carrying on, not fighting, but that is carrying on.
No, I'm not disputing that at all. I think it's great that the harbor can generate enough revenue that some can go into the city to support all city procurement services. I think it's great. I would just like to know what the understanding is so that we know what the goalposts are.
Yeah, I hear you on that point.
This sort of brings up a component of distrust, I think, with city staff, which I'm not comfortable with, because I think we should trust them to do their jobs. The numbers seem to speak adequately. If we start to see things that have a significant problem or discrepancy in there, I think that's worth addressing within our group as a work group. And then, is that something to put into a report so that's going, something worth highlighting and sending as part of that, addressing an issue, but it's not necessarily for us to solve that, and that could go out to staff and council as a here's what we see, this doesn't make sense to us, we're not going to pay off the loan by X date, we have concerns, and we leave it at that, because I see that as being a very effective way to do this. As far as asking the people who are crunching the numbers and doing a lot of financial work for the city, that we want to know that part. I feel that's a little bit overreaching from realistic where we should be, the information we should necessarily be getting. If the council's happy with it, with the information they're receiving, that seems to be an adequate amount now. If we see a problem, it's for us to address the issue, but not necessarily know how, if there isn't currently an issue, I don't think that I think that's overreaching for us to start to pursue that at this stage. If we do see an issue come up, go into a report, do we bring it up as an individual issue? And then we have Ryan or Mallory come and attend a meeting. It's a great way to deal with it. As far as us now pursuing this, it's a lot of, there's a lot of manpower to be put in there for us to have access to that, whether we even should, because it's not necessarily in our mandate.
Can we let the other people talk on the issue?
Terry, let the chair do his job.
I'm next. I support Ken's question about the North Harbour loan.
definitely, I feel it's within our rights to ask a pointed question to council. Will that loan be paid off at the end of the amortization period? We need to know that. Because if not, then we can clear the air, yes, because it doesn't sound like it's gonna be. So I don't have a problem supporting that at all. If we were to say, we want to make sure that that loan is paid off as scheduled.
Or not, if there's a deliberate decision not to, share it with us, that's all I'm asking.
Sasha?
I think it's a good item for a report that we're gonna write. If we're gonna write a report. I think it's
Could you include
we
that?
have some questions about this. This is what we see. Here's your report.
Okay, would that satisfy?
Well, as far as the status of the North Harbour loan, that's all I've ever asked for.
Okay.
That's all I've ever, the initial question was, has the city decided, not to pay off the loan by the maturity date in 2041? That was too big an ask apparently.
Well, can we roll that into
I just wanted to bring that one
Sasha's questionnaire that, or,
Well,
project?
yeah, I guess we could. I don't understand why you can't just get an answer.
Yeah, we don't seem to be coming to.
Yeah.
We're going in circles and the clock is ticking, so I'm gonna
Yeah.
suggest that we, give Sasha's suggestion a whirl.
Or we could put the request to council.
Sorry?
Or we could put the request to council. And you know what? It doesn't need to be this committee. I mean, I can put the question to council.
Yeah, as the individuals, we can all put that.
The chair, if you want to make a motion, Ken, to send to council, you put it on the table right now.
Well, you know, I would like to make a motion actually. And I think I would ask for clarity on the status of the North Harbour loan and the city's intention with respect to repayment of the loan. And I would also ask that council confirm how excess revenues derived from North Harbour are allocated to various city funds. If we go out there,
that motion.
thank you. If we go out there and put in a lot of volunteer time and we're able and open up North Harbour to transient votes and we're able to generate another $50,000 a year. From my perspective, that the intent of that is to reduce the pressure on hikes in moorage rates, which will benefit all harbour users. From the city's perspective, they might say 50,000 more for general revenues. I would like to know what's going to happen to that money before we go out and volunteer time to try to make it happen.
Good point.
I don't think that's asking much
I
at all.
think we're meeting common ground here, so.
So we have a mover and seconder. We have the motion on the floor now, Jim, for anybody else that wants to weigh
I
in.
think you need to write the motion.
Yeah.
What does the motion say?
The chair, if I may, so can your questions were, as you just said in the motion, were all detailed in a long email that the CFO does have, and a couple long emails. And
Yeah.
so, respectfully, the motion will go to council, and council, if they agree with it, will direct staff, and it's still on the list of the CFO to respond to. And so she has this finished financial plan, and then she's going into property tax, and then they have the audit, and then it's summer, so it will be on her list, but
I'm happy
I
with
don't
leaving it there.
I don't think the motion will respectfully
Change it, fair enough.
change where her capacity is unless council wants her to stop working on.
I'm happy to
on it.
leave things as they
Closer
stand.
to our discussion. We've never said that we're not trying to push any longer. We're asking council two very specific questions.
Well,
which interest us.
I am happy to leave that where it stands. The one concern I have is that the responses that I got is that the CFO is prepared to discuss my questions, not to attempt to address the questions. So if we are talking a fulsome discussion, I am totally happy with that. And I've talked to a couple other people about this, and I think there'll be a few of us who'd like to attend that meeting. And we would, of course, be bringing the information back to the committee.
Jerry?
We move the question.
Okay.
Vote on it.
So we need a seconder for that?
I seconded it.
You second it? Okay.
Are we still putting a motion to council? Is there any point? It's just gonna go to Valerie, and it's already on her.
We've got a motion on the table.
Okay.
Question, we can vote on it.
Okay.
You don't want to, if you want to vote against the motion you made, you can do that.
All those in favor? Opposed?
And I will just follow up, Ken, when that motion appears on the agenda, I will contact you so that you're in the gallery that night. You'll have the ability to speak to it.
How's the motion working? What did we just vote on?
So the committee recommend that staff report on when the harbor loan will be paid off and how the reserves are allocated.
Yeah, excess, or revenues over expenses, whatever,
Excess revenues.
excess revenues, if that's clear enough, yeah. Perfect.
Does that satisfy 7.3, 7.4, and 7.5?
Hell, yeah.
Moving on to the 7.6, Transient Moorage Statistics for 2024.
7.4, did we deal with that one?
Yes.
Oh, no, we haven't, no.
Oh, he asked you whether it's down with that. You said yes.
Oh, sorry, no,
Um,
we haven't done.
okay, let's revert back to 7.4 then. Procedure for presenting committee recommendations to council, and that was yours?
That was mine. I'm a little bit confused at how the three recommendations that went to council, two out of the three were significantly diluted, for lack of a better word, from what the committee's recommendation was. The reference to the pump out station, or with respect to the pump out station, our reference to dock space being reserved for exclusively for use of the pump out was to be deleted from the motion. But I just wasn't sure what happens in the process for a significant part of the motion not to make it to council. Ditto with the motion on the South Harbour improvements and food trucks. All reference to trying to make it more practical, I think, for food trucks to find that space useful, was deleted from the motion to council. So again, I'm just seeking clarity at how the motions changed so significantly from what the committee passed to what was eventually presented to council. And I think a couple of councillors at that meeting were also, and the amendment.
Give me one sec, just I want Jamie to be able to get caught up on this. He's referring to 6.1 on page 1.
Yeah. I'm just saying, I think a couple of councillors actually reacted the same way, in that they were suggesting that the motion not go forward to council, that it be sent back to the committee to make sure that the committee was in concurrence with the way the motion was presented to council, which is kind of where we wound up anyway. But I'm just seeking some kind of understanding on what the process is, and yeah. That's something for the city to speak to, I think.
Okay, Sasha.
I was at that meeting as well, and I listened to all of that, and I understand exactly what you're saying. I think for us as a committee, it's important when we make a motion to council to be very clear about our words, to be very concise, not give them. We gotta be clear about what we're asking them to do, and I think it was alluded to earlier that when we make a motion to council, that is accompanied by staff's comment. I don't know if staff's comment made it to you guys at council for those last bunch of motions. It seemed like maybe staff comment didn't make it.
Well, just to clarify, the motions came forward twice.
Yep.
Once as is from committee and second time with follow-up from staff.
Okay. I think we just need to be really clear about what we're asking.
Okay, Rob?
I know, originally when we put the motion forward, it was lineal footage spoke about. I don't recall that. I was at that meeting as well. I don't recall that being brought up at that meeting for lineal footage. There was a reference from the councillors as to the Wharfinger is doing the job now and it seems to be working, so why rock the apple cart? And I think that's why we're seeing what we see here, and that's what was passed. I don't know why that was changed. I don't recall that ever coming back to us to see if it was, because there was no talk of the lineal footage on the motion at council.
Or any 7/24/7 reservation.
Yes.
Sasha, then Chair.
Yeah, that was my concern, because those are the items that were presented, and then it went back to city staff, and I saw the city staff report, which was also fairly diluted, where it sort of said city staff is sorting this out or manages this, and that's probably fine. Where they're, from our perspective, we're there, where harbor users were seeing where things are being missed or things could be improved, especially for transient traffic. And that information doesn't get passed to council. That doesn't make it through the motion. We say, here's what we feel. And then it goes back to city staff. And then that gets missed because maybe even some of the staff are not necessarily, or people making the report maybe aren't even harbor users themselves. So there's sort of, then by the time it goes back to council, there isn't the detail. There's no detail in it. And I'm always wondering, I have sent an email to everybody on council with some detail to it, whether it was effective. It seems to be effective because those motions passed, but how to actually get that additional information attached with the motions to council so they can make an informed decision. That's what I'm really curious on, is what are the steps for that information to pass, to make it all the way to council. Here's why we've been appointed as the Harbour Advisory Committee to make these recommendations, but that information doesn't flow upwards so that people are making an informed decision. I know Councillor Isaacson said, I don't know what a marine pump out is. I don't use the harbor. I don't have enough information. So now it gets ping pong back. We're missing that chunk of information. I don't know how that typically flows, how to attach that information so council's up to date on what the Harbour Advisory Committee is generally aware of. We have a pretty good knowledge base here, so.
May I butt in just for a sec? I want to follow up on some of his comments, because when I watched that particular council meeting, I thought disrespected. I thought that what the work that our committee had done to bring those 3 items forward was kind of lobbied back at us again, like, try better next time. I wasn't satisfied with the way the results were for that. And I spoke to some other members of the committee likewise. But Sasha touched on a point when he talked about Councillor Isaacson's didn't know what a pump out was. So that plays into my report thing, that they're just not informed. Like, how can they make an informed decision when they don't know what they're voting on? Like, that was an item, the sewer pump out station. She didn't know what it was. So we need to bring those people up to speed. Terry?
So the process as I see it is that our motion as we wrote it would appear to council. And staff would attach the discussion and their recommendations. Staff's sort of responsible for making sure council has the information they need to make a decision. But our power comes from the fact that the motion as we write it appears in front of council. And staff can write whatever they think is appropriate on their recommendation. So we don't get to decide. We only get to raise an issue, put it in front of council. So our power is we can actually put language in front of council. As Sasha said, we should write the language well so it has impact. But we don't educate council. We don't produce the whole package. That's staff work. And so we should expect staff may not disagree with us. But then council sees that we said X, staff said Y, and they get to decide. And we get to live with it.
I'm gonna just finish off what Terry said. Jamie, this is for you. Those 3 items that went to council were all brought to this committee level because there was dissatisfaction from harbor users and the committee. So we brought it forward, and like I said, it got lobbed right back at us. So Rob?
Mr. Fleming, with the new council procedures, are we able to speak to anything that is on the agenda as a committee member if it is put forward to the agenda and speak at council in the open?
If it falls under one of those, yes, because it would be committee recommendations it would fall under. That's something that up to 3 people can have some input on. If this is an okay time in your meeting, I can provide some background to how what you're discussing came to council. Is that a good time for you to hear what I have to say on this? Yeah, okay. So when they first came on February 6th, they were just the 3 recommendations on the agenda. Council was like, we don't know what to make of these. Can we have some context? So the suggestion was that, recommendations from any committee should be accompanied by a staff report, as the committee is, an advisory committee of council, tasked with whatever the committee's mandate is, and that they're not always worded in ways that might be sort of what would come out of a staff report in terms of what can council do or not do. So for example, the pump out station policy, if you want to regulate something, you have to regulate that by bylaw. You can't regulate something by policy. So that's just, and the committee's not expected to know that level of operational and sort of administrative detail. And so the staff report, which I wrote, and I am not a Harbour user, I did have a tour of the Harbour prior to writing the report, and had input from Tor and other people as well. The committees, as the 3 recommendations as worded by the committee were in the report, then there was a discussion on each, and then staff came up with recommendations which council was free to adopt or not adopt. And so that's how the report came about. And I think the flow chart that is on the agenda sort of spells out how that would work in practice, that your recommendations would have a staff comment on them, which council can either take or not take. It's at the end of the day, all staff do is make recommendations and give advice. Council's the decision maker. And so this is actually a way to get what you want done actually accomplished. So I think that there might be some misconceptions on both sides, but I'd say what staff are trying to do is take what the committee is recommendation, presenting it in a way to council that council can actually advance what you want done. It might not be done in the way that you're prescribing it, but that's not your role. Your role is to raise the issue, and then council's role is to decide, do we agree with the issue? And if so, how do we want to actually get it done?
Can I just ask for clarification? Is then the motion that the committee submitted, is it to be presented to council intact?
It was.
Because they weren't in this case.
Well, as they appeared on, they were all identical as they appeared on the February 6th agenda. So when they first appeared on the February 6th agenda, Harbour Pump Out Station policy, transient boater insurance, harbour improvements, those were taken verbatim from there to the March 6th.
Didn't the February 6th agenda refer to reserving dock space for exclusive use of pump out? I'm sure it did.
The council considered changing, where are we here? Council directs staff to create a policy regarding a pump out station stating 40 lineal feet at the end of dock 11 is reserved for the pump out station and ensuring it be used and marketed to its fullest extent. Is that what you're referring to?
That all disappeared from the motion that went to council.
That is in the motion and in the staff report that went on on March the 6th. I'm reading it. It's on the website.
It's not on the materials that I see.
Councillor Pond?
Bizarre.
Mr. Clinton, thank you very much for that valuable information and how that came about. My question is very similar to Rob's here, and that is, would it be helpful when these specific motions come forward, if there is a champion of that motion at this table in this committee, could they address the motion in the council chamber to update council to the fullest extent?
Well, respectfully, Councillor Palm, as staff, as sort of council liaison, that is also part of your role on council to champion the recommendations when they come forward at the council meeting. But if somebody wants to be one of the 3 or people that speak, they could do that as well. It's always best if the chair speaks on behalf of the council. Of the committee, but that would be something that a committee member could do for sure.
Thank you very much for that.
Anybody else got anything to add?
Well, yeah, I'm just looking at the agenda for the March 6th meeting. As a recommendation to council, it doesn't contain, the background contains a reference to reserving 40 lineal feet and then there's the staff discussion. But the recommendation itself does not contain any reference to reserving space. I mean, isn't that?
Yeah, we're talking
essential?
about two different things here. So
Okay.
the first question was, what happened to the recommendation from the committee? The committee recommendation was before council and it is there as I read out. The discussion was, council, if you want to regulate this, you need to regulate it by bylaw. That was an option for them to direct staff to amend the bylaw to actually regulate the pump out space.
Okay.
And then, so the recommendation from in the staff report, after speaking with staff, including Tor and the harbor wharfer, was that part of the issue is there's no there's not proper signage, and a quicker and easier way to accomplish what you're looking for is to put up some appropriate signage. There's also some is there a way to properly collect fees for this? So there were a bunch of other things. That was the sort of recommended from staff. Council had the option to direct that it be regulated by bylaw. At the end of the day, after some discussion, they went with and adopted the 3 staff recommendations.
Yeah, the staff recommended something different than we did, but what we said was in the packet that council saw. That's all we can expect.
But the recommendation to council, staff had already deleted the reference to reserving space from the recommendation to council.
Which is fine.
A couple of weeks prior, I've seen that also, and it was in fact there, yeah, I agree. Yes, I agree. Okay, well, I guess I just need to clarify the procedures then, because it seems to me that the committee's request that dock space be reserved was not going forward, was not presented to council. Am I misreading something?
It was in the report.
It was in the background, but it wasn't part of the council was asked to vote on.
Which is what staff recommended, something different, which is fine.
Staff, okay, so staff recommended.
But they carried forward our comments to council.
Okay. Oh, well, that's fair, yeah. I might suggest though, in that if something like this occurs in the future, and I'm sure it will, that council have the benefit of the rationale behind our initial recommendation. Because it's not in the report.
Councillor Pump?
So just to be fair and candid with everyone, we're getting our baby steps in place and our P's and Q's in order here. This is not something that has been regularly done in the past. Staff's dealing with the change. You're dealing with the change, some communication. But at the end of the day, when those 3 motions came to council for consideration, in order to get anything done on it, they needed to be passed that night, and council heard that loud and clear. And that's why they were passed, because there was some reservation, because they weren't exactly what the committee wanted. We were fully aware of that. So that's why the decision was made to pass those 3 motions at the council chamber. Just so you're aware.
Yeah, well, I did watch the goings on. And my understanding is that they're coming back to committee for whatever, a second kick at it or something.
Something like that.
So in the future, it sounds like if we were gonna move something through to a council meeting, you would go there to represent it, and you could deputize who was ever champion in that particular cause, and we could have some, yeah.
Would it make sense to have any information we do want passed, obviously as concise as possible for you to be able to present as these items come up to the remaining councillors, just to, small sentence to highlight. The pump out station is most marinas might have this at the entrance to their marina. We do not. Here's why, things like that would probably be the ideal thing to present.
So when those 3 motions appeared that night, we've got a lot on our agenda those evenings. So I wasn't prepared I was relying on staff to speak to them. I wasn't prepared to jump in there and say, I'm the champion of this motion here tonight. So in the future, you can be assured, I'm gonna call on the people that have the expertise at this table to appear at those meetings. So, you know, you're in good shape. You're in good shape.
Ken, does that satisfy
Yeah,
procedures?
no, I think it's great. It clarifies, what's
So
going
we
on.
can move to
I'm
7.6.
comfortable.
We can
The crowd
move-
was hot that night too.
we can move to 7.6.
Alright.
I'd like to wrap this up by 9. I do have something for a question period, so. I don't know who brought this forward. It's just maybe staff has
Transient
forwarded
Moorage
this
stats.
for information.
I asked them to get the final stats
Okay.
from, Transient Moorage, and I gotta say, I mean, it's great news.
Yeah.
That's an 80% bump.
Do you know this, the span? Was that
80%.
from day 1 to end of September type
That's to
thing?
the end of the fiscal, or to the end of the calendar year.
End of the calendar year?
Yeah, I was talking to Jen the other day.
80% bump.
Transient revenue in 2023 was 101,000. We got 180,000 here. Now, I mean, that's just an incredible.
That's January to December.
Yeah, that's the year.
Jim, do you have any reference to when you were down there, what kind of revenue would be generated?
We were significantly lower than that, but for the most part of my career down there, I had 6 floats and I've got 11. And our daily rate is somewhere around,
Yeah.
it was less than $1. I remember when I hit $1, I was like, oh, people aren't gonna like that, but yeah, it's.
Right.
Significantly more than I just. Okay,
So it's a high bar for next year.
Yeah, just some great looking statistics, which was sort of paired with some of the motions that we passed and for some potential improved signage and things in the South Harbor. This directly affects why we recommended those things, because the numbers look great, revenues look up. I'm sure the city would appreciate those revenues for an improved financial outlook for 2025. So that's why I recommended the small changes to help improve these numbers again for 2025's year. So
Appreciate it.
great. Well, the next one is questions. I've got one that I can get out there quickly.
No, 7.7, that number of attendance.
Yeah, committee attendance and 7.8 transient survey.
Oh, I mean, I made notes and I didn't go back. I'm a rookie.
747 member attendance.
Member attendance.
Meetings consecutively, the terms of reference say that no member is to miss more than 3 meetings. They also I spoke to him about it, had some personal conflicts with scheduling, and he also won't be able to make May, June meetings either.
Maybe a way of work, yeah.
So it would, I believe, be up to the committee whether, Mr. Coleman, correct me if I'm wrong, whether the committee members stayed on that.
I'm pretty sure, just let me go back to the terms of reference, committee members sit at council's pleasure. Just let me go back to the mandate.
3 meetings. There is specific reference to this circumstance.
That would be.
3 consecutive, I believe it reads.
Yeah, it was 3 consecutives and then it was a decision by
And if I'm not,
council.
I'm not mistaken, he was absent with leave last meeting.
It just through the chair. Ms. Walls, you were in conversation with him? Did he appear like he wanted to continue, do you know?
Just, yeah.
Okay.
I made a note on the February 5th meeting that Cam was absent with leave. But consistent with everybody?
Yeah, the terms of reference.
Yeah.
Just speak to that, I think.
Yeah, so the terms of reference say committee members are expected to not miss 3 consecutive meetings. It doesn't say you miss 3 consecutive meetings and your seat's declared vacant. So it would be council's decision whether that a continued absence warrants a person's removal. And if that, if as opposed to the committees that doesn't have that authority to say that or to make that decision, if you want to pass that to council for consideration, then I'm not sure in the past how those types of things have been brought to council's attention.
Oh, okay.
I don't think it's worth us pursuing.
Yeah. I have concerns about missing a lot of meetings, but at the same time, fishermen specifically are gonna miss a bunch of meetings because of their profession, so.
As long as there's,
Does anybody have-
question is more, there's more, better put to the commercial interests, who's speaking on behalf.
The only thing that I would recommend, Jim, anybody that's down at the harbor, you see probably Cam quite often, just mention to him that he should be checking in with Jessica or myself or Jim, just to let us know that he's not gonna be at the meeting. Just a courteous thing to do. Just.
And if he's not interested, he could resign too.
And he
go
can
about
resign if he
recruiting.
can't make me. So.
Because we'd like to hear from the fisher.
Yeah, yeah. Well, we have an obligation to hear from them.
Yeah, and we haven't been getting that. That's my only concern is that.
So maybe when you talk to Cam, ask him that question about representation of fishermen, and he can make a decision.
I talked to them a lot and I asked them quite often, you want me to bring anything? And they seem to be busy guys.
Okay.
It
7.8
goes back here as well, so.
7.8 is the transient voter survey that, it's still going on.
Yeah, I was in the office the other day and the questionnaires was telling the counselor, and I asked Jen, she says, oh yeah, transient comes in and wants to fill it out, blah, blah, blah. I think that survey was intended for last year. And if we were to continue it, I think we would want to change it. And I think these questionnaires should be round 5. Like it should cease.
It's done,
It should not be,
run its course.
yeah. That's my position. I think it's a good decision.
If it was to proceed, it should go through the same avenue as our local voter survey, and that being this, an online survey that's independently operated, that is isolated from.
Yeah.
So question Jamie can look at, now he's aware of the survey, he's aware we think there's some question about it.
Just a matter of hopefully baffling Jen,
Yeah.
take them off the counter.
Can we ask Jamie if he can just suggest a get pulled from the counter?
Yeah.
Fair enough.
Let him survey happening in his area, he can decide what he wants to do with it.
Okay, question period. I'll ask the folks in the gallery first, but the last meeting we had at the tail end during question period, Mr. Tom Harris with the sailing vessel Enchantress. I was gauging or watching at the screen, and all of a sudden I got this paper in front of me. I had no time to read it. Number one, it's unfortunate that he didn't appear as a delegation where he could explain his thing, give us the handout so we could study it beforehand. What happened to his boat was a tragedy. I feel for the guy, I really do. So what I want to do is I'd like to ask Jamie, you don't know about the letter yet, you haven't seen it, but you will. Has his problem been satisfied to his satisfaction? What happened was on some large commercial tugboats in the vicinity of where his boat is parked, when they fire up, there's residue diesel that's mixed with the soot from the exhaust. When it hits compression stroke, it spews it all over the harbor. Now, not only does it hit his boat, but in the water, on the floats that make them slippery, and there's all sorts of things that happen. Now, it's my understanding that towboat company was told their persona non grata, don't come back. But was Mr. Harris's issue ever addressed?
I talked to him for quite a while after the meeting.
Yeah.
And he didn't really expect us to do anything.
Mhm.
And he decided not to pursue his insurance for financial reasons, but he mainly wanted it to bring the issue forward as doing the harbor better.
Okay.
So the question, he was not expecting us to do anything, nor the city able to do anything in relation to that. So yes, he was satisfied with the hearing he got, and he went forward. I think I'm fair saying
You're
that.
confident in that?
Yes.
The question is that vessel still down there at all, or is it?
Enchantress is still there, but the tugboat is gone. And I believe that the company has not been back.
They've been back, but that specific boat is not to come to the harbor.
Okay.
That's what I was told.
Didn't Tara say he told them to keep all their bigger ones on the harbor?
Yeah, that one specifically for sure,
Yeah.
was asked not to return back
That's
to the harbor.
we're wrecking that dock too.
Yeah, they did damage to the dock in a storm because they're heavy and the way they were tied. So I know.
That was another point in his letter.
And they are gonna fix the docks.
Thunder Bay's gonna pick up the bill on that?
All right,
Yeah, and that's something that Jamie would need to know as well. I mean, it's gonna be an expensive repair. So, is it on 11?
10.
10?
Yeah.
So do you need more follow-up on that, or I'm sure you can.
I think Jen has the letter too.
Okay, so I think we don't need any more on that, so we can go to the gallery and see.
I have a quick question if I may, or
Okay,
with you guys first. Just wondering where the final version of the minutes appear. I know the original version stays attached to the agenda on the city's webpage and is in perpetuity, but I don't know where the amended versions are.
So when they're adopted by that same page where the agenda is, there's an agenda button and a minutes button, and so they're both right on that same page. So once they're
Okay, so the
adopted
final
here,
minutes,
then they're published.
the
Yeah.
final minutes will be on the same page.
Yeah.
Thank you.
I've got one question just regarding some dock maintenance issue that I saw down there, and right now there was, because we talked about it over the last meeting where there was Tor was here. There was a burned out power box that hasn't been repaired, but I think it's been about 5 months since it's been hasn't been repaired, and it's on the transient docks. So I was curious.
11, right?
Yeah, on
Or 10.
dock 10.
Right by the ward.
Yeah, and it hasn't been repaired yet, but I have concerns regarding the transient season coming up that it would be repaired.
It was a parks issue.
Yeah, they were saying where they were talking about GFCIs. I know Rob Stokes had some comment on that about potential for the city to switch to GFCIs. But I wonder if that's part of just, if there's the ability for repair to happen in the name of making it like more receptive for transient boaters to come and visit. Because currently there's one whole power box down and there's only 3 on the whole finger. And so with one being down, that's probably about 3 or 4 slips that people don't have access to power. But it's been 5 months now, and we're coming up on like transient boat visitor season, so. That would be, yeah.
Can you do a follow-up on that, please, Jamie?
I'll do a follow-up, and I seem to recall some conversation about that a long time before I was involved with Harbors. That at a more senior level, on some GFCI challenges. Yeah, that prevented us from our fire marshal from being able to do some of this.
Yeah.
So, and I don't know, I was not been involved.
I know Doug's got something.
We're at 9 o'clock.
We're like preparations for this year.
Yeah.
So I will check the budget, I will check where that's at. I'll report back.
Awesome, thank you. Yeah, we understand a lot of handoff between then and now, so.
We'll go to the gallery and then Mr. Stokes.
Well, I just might make a comment on Enchantress. I was down there the other day, maybe about a week ago, and the boat looks really, really clean now. So I guess he solved the problem. He said it was gonna cost him 40,000 to fix it up, to clean it up or something, when he was in here. And I think he solved the whole problem. It looks pretty good to me. Yeah,
Well, that's good to hear.
yeah.
Good. Other questions? Councillor Selcott. Thank you for the praise we got at that council meeting, by the way.
Mr. Stokes.
Mr. Stokes?
Thank you, Chair. Nothing for me tonight.
Right, well, with that, I guess we can call.
We need next meeting.
And the next meeting.
When do we want to meet again?
Well, we typically take at least 1 month off in the summer, so why don't we meet in May for sure?
Yes.
Yeah, first Wednesday in May.
Sure. So that date will be. 7th. Yeah, the 7th.
The 7th next.
And I just say personally, I'm sorry I was late tonight, but when they have a mechanical issue and you're putting along, trying to get to London Harbor, takes a little while.
How was the prawn fishing? Yeah, that's the question.
And,
I move for German.
yeah.
Second. Looks like that was unanimous. Thanks, guys, for walking me through this.
Yeah, thanks for all your time.
Thanks for chairing there.
Oh, you're welcome, Jim. I was gonna ask you at the end of the meeting,